Good afternoon, everyone. We have with us Mr. Jayesh Ranjan, who is the Principal Secretary, Industries and Commerce, uh, Government of Telangana. He also is the Principal Secretary for IT as well. Uh, Professor Bhagwan Chaudhary is going to moderate the session. I see Bhagwan also online. Ashwin is also online. So, Bhagwan, over to you, please.
Thank you, Guru. Thank you, Jayesh, for being here, and welcome everyone to this session. So I've known Jayesh for a few years now. If you're in Hyderabad, when you come to Hyderabad, you will notice that everybody in Hyderabad knows Jayesh and knows Jayesh well. And I was thinking of how to describe him. Well, he invited me once to have a meeting with him in his office. So I showed up at his office, and it was an experience. I have to tell you, Jesh, it was an experience. I went into the room. There was a big, long table, like a dining table kind of thing. He was sitting at one end. And as I went in, I started at the end of the table. And there were some people who were close to him. And as he was dealing with them, we kept moving up the line as our turn came. So there was no time wasted whatsoever. In fact, what Jayesh did was, when you go to government offices, they always give you like a tea or they offer you something. He didn't want to waste any time. So my tea came before I started talking to him. So by the time I reached him, my tea was already done. And he said, okay, what's your question? What can I do for you? While he was eating a sandwich himself, so no time wasted. So I think of Jayesh as basically a combination of a wise guru, a connector, who knows where the problems are, who knows where the resources are, and he's able to match the resources with the problems. So Jayesh, welcome to meet our students, and they will get to know you more as we get along. Now, Jayesh, as a little bit of a background about him, was the topper of IAS in 1992. He has a degree in psychology from University of Delhi, and then an MBA from a well-known school in other part of the country, which we shall not name. But at that time, ISB wasn't there, so we will just leave it at that. And then he also has a master's in public policy from the Lee Kuan Yew School of Singapore. When I was looking up your profile, Jayesh, I found that you've been to many, many different programs in public policy all over the world, and you bring in a lot of wealth of experience. So this is what we're going to do, guys. I'm going to reach out to you for questions, but the way the questions are going to work is we are not going to do it via chat. You need to do in Zoom what's called raise a hand. Arushi is with us. She's going to be watching us, who's raising the hands. And then she'll pick you and say, what is your question? Aditi, what is your question? So you raise your hand, she'll unmute you, and then you can ask your questions, okay? And we'll reach out to the students fairly quickly. So, Jayesh, you're very interested in a sector in Telangana, which has to do with artisans, in particular handloom. And we are going to have a presentation by those people tomorrow. Tell us a little bit about why this sector interests you so much.
Yes. So, good afternoon, Professor Chaudhary, and welcome to all the members of the new cohort. Look forward to seeing you sometime soon in Hyderabad. In fact, as Professor Chaudhary said, I live in Hyderabad, so I am a very frequent visitor to the ISB campus, and I have participated in lots of students-related, students-organized events also in the past. So look forward to seeing you very, very soon. But nevertheless, this is a good way to kind of get introduced, break the ice. But before I answer this question, which Mr. Chaudhary has asked about handlooms and handicrafts. Let me also tell you something. You are at the very beginning of your business school journey. Roughly around 30 years ago, I embarked on the same journey. And the reason I am in the IAS today is because of that business school. I mean, when I took that business school program, I was determined that I should stay away from the corporate world as much as I can. And then at that late stage in my life, I had to think about what else can I do. And somehow I got into civil services and so on and so forth. But nevertheless, so this has been a very good journey. But the point which I'm making is that I'll be the wrong person if you ask me about business school advice and stuff like that to tell you anything. But now coming back to what Professor Chaudhary asked, see, as most of you would be aware, Telangana is a new state. This is the youngest state in the country. It came into being in June 2014, so roughly 6 years ago. And when you start on this kind of a journey, that you are a new state, you have the opportunity to look at all your programs, all your policies, whatever, there's no legacy that pulls you down. So one of the very clear leadership messages which was given to us in the bureaucracy was that, see, as many of you would know, the process of creating new states in India is not new. We have had new states in the past also. We had Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, we had Uttaranchal, but and these were all created in 2001. So roughly 19 years have gone by. But if you look back at these states, what exactly have they achieved? So it's only out of politeness that we still call these states as emerging states or developing states, when we know very well that nothing further is going to emerge from there, nothing else will develop there, and they have more or less been failed experiments. I mean, nothing spectacular has happened. There may be some good things, and of course, I'm not running anyone down. I'm sure in the class also there'll be students from Jharkhand, Uttaranchal, and Chhattisgarh. So not an intention to run anyone down. But if you ask anyone in general, the general consensus will be that these states have not been spectacular. So Telangana could have gone the same path. Tomorrow people also would have looked back and said that this was a wrong decision to create the state of Telangana. So the leadership was very conscious that we must be different. We must set a good example. We must show to people that this can be, despite being a new state, this can be a progressive state, this can be a business-friendly state, this can look into the real issues which people face. So in the early days of Telangana becoming a state, we actually did a very big visioning exercise. And incidentally, that exercise happened in the ISB campus. The dean at that time, Professor Rangnekar, he had organized it, and myself and my minister and quite a few of us were there. And many suggestions came, but one of the suggestions was that let us look at those sectors which are really, we have seen, so I'm sure all of you know this, that there are certain sectors of our economy where the distress is so high that people have committed suicides. As you know, farming in a dry land scenario has been a source of great distress, and large number of people have committed suicide. So when we looked at the data, we found that this is again a sector, that is weavers, craftspersons in Telangana. Before Telangana came into being, for many years, there have been cases every year of some 20 people, 30 people, 25 people committing suicide, etc. So this kind of got us thinking that this is just not acceptable. If it is preventable, if there are ways of intervening in their economic cycle, if we can help them, then why should a scenario arise that people are forced to commit suicide? So for the last 5 years, we have intervened in the entire value chain of crafts operations, weaving operations. Some of you may know that there is a very strong textile tradition in Telangana, which is called the Pochampalli Ikat. I mean, some of you perhaps have worn dresses also. These are very attractive kind of clothes. When you come and in the government, suppose I was interacting with you on a Monday, you would have seen me wearing a handloom shirt made of Pochampalli. This is a norm in our government that every Monday all government employees must wear handloom. So I'm sure when you come to Hyderabad and look around and try to imbibe the local culture, people will guide you or direct you towards stores which sell beautiful handloom shirts and women wear and stuff like that. So As I said, we intervened in multiple levels. We found out what is the reason of their indebtedness. How can that chain of indebtedness be broken? So multiple programs were introduced. And our results were really giving very, very encouraging initial results. In fact, in the last 5 years, we started with an ambition that we will double their incomes. See, we have, when we began this exercise in around 2016 or so, we found that a weaver typically gets about 10,000 rupees a month, 12,000 rupees a month. And our effort was initially to make it double. So 20,000, 25,000. And roughly towards the end of last year, 2019 or so, we were able to claim that almost 80% of the weavers today in the state get double that income. 80% of the craft persons get double that income. And then suddenly this pandemic has come, and as all of us
So how long,
understand.
Jayesh, how long did it take for you to double their incomes? What was the period?
It took about 3 years. 3 years, but I won't say that we have done it. I won't say that we have done it 100 for all the craft persons, all the handloom weavers in the state. My estimate is that we have been able to support around 80% of them. There are about 20% of them who still need help. But as I said, in this scenario where different kinds of businesses have been impacted adversely, it is also in some ways it can pull them back to where they were earlier. Whatever we have done in the last 3 years could be neutralized. So we are very, very keen that despite this pandemic, despite the fact that dynamics of the markets have changed, despite the fact that the supply chain has been disrupted, consumer behavior has changed. So many people. So for instance, as I said, when we introduced this norm or this practice in the government that everyone must wear a handloom cloth on Monday. So before we introduced this norm, this was about two years ago. I might be having one shirt or two handloom shirts in my wardrobe. But when this rule was introduced, I bought 20 of them so that at least every Monday I look different. It doesn't appear that I have just one shirt which I wear every Monday. And obviously, if you take interest in handloom, you'll realize the amazing richness, the variety, the sheer attractiveness of those patterns and designs. And of course, there are lots of designers in Hyderabad, some of whom are my friends. They kind of specially design something attractive.
And now there is social media, so you can't wear the same shirt again because people will go on Facebook that
of course. That is true. So, but the point is, when I'm mentioning that consumer behaviors, of course, we don't have exact evidence now, but there is a possibility that someone like me who bought 20 shirts in the past, now we may choose to manage with just 3. So definitely there is an impact on the market of these handloom weavers. The market would have shrunk. So we are very keen to ensure that whatever good work we have done for them, that momentum is sustained. We build upon it instead of allowing them to slip down. And since I'm talking to Professor Chaudhary and all the students, I'm very happy to share this with you. You must be familiar with this Jumpstart initiative which ISB has taken to revive, to provide not just knowledge support, but to actually provide a toolkit or practical know-how on how to help different sectors impacted during this pandemic for their revival. And again, I feel very, very proud to share this with you that ISB has chosen to support Telangana government in our handicrafts and handlooms revival effort. So I'm sure some of you as students also would be involved in this initiative. So we'll be happy to interact further on this as well.
So we are very excited. We are very excited to actually work with the Telangana government. Now, in your description, you used a couple of words which are like music to us academics. You said that you looked at some data to figure out that there was distress among certain classes. In particular, you found weavers. And you also said that you look at evidence afterwards to see how these guys are behaving. We want to introduce this at a big scale, is to look at the sources of data in a more systematic way and look at the sources of data in a more dynamic, real-time way. So we have a number of projects that we are doing with Jumpstart India to create indices of economic activity and indices of distress and other things so that we can point out where the distress is and where the interventions could be made. Now, one of the things people know about you is that you are a really far-sighted person when it comes to information technology, and data and evidence is something that is very close to you. Tell us how we can help Telangana with some of these things.
Sure, Professor Chaudhary. So I'll tell something which will be of tremendous interest and value to all the students. But let me ask Arushi. I mean, are you finding these answers of mine very lengthy? Should I give short and crisper answers so that we can accommodate more questions, or there are very few questions? So if I continue to give long answers, they're okay. What is your advice? Because I realized that this one answer alone has taken 12 minutes. We are at 4:32.
I'm going to interrupt you more. I'm going to interrupt you more to make your answers short so that we can go to the questions. So don't worry about it. You go ahead, and if I interrupt you, don't mind me.
Sure. But I would like to tell something in the larger context of data, Mr. Chaudhary, and perhaps even you are not aware of what I'm going to tell you. So this also will excite you quite a lot. See, all of us, I'm sure, know this, that the government itself is a huge compiler of data. So for example, if you pay, you live in Hyderabad, and if you pay property tax, then your name will figure in the GHMCs, the municipal corporations database. If you pay water bills every month, your name will appear in the water bill database. If you own a car, your name will be in the transport department's database. If you have something, if you run a small business, your name will figure in the commercial taxes department's database, and so on and so forth. So each of us have very significant data footprints in different databases of the government. But the unfortunate thing is that each of these databases are maintained in silos. So the municipal corporation has a database of property payers, property tax payers. Someone else has another database, a third agency has a third database, and so on and so forth. So we have done something very, very unique. I mean, it is slightly controversial, and I'm sure when I explain this a little bit more, many of you, your antennas will be alerted. Perhaps you'll think that we are doing something illegal. But I'll be happy to explain or clarify to you that there's no illegality in what we do. So what we have done is that we have identified 30 databases which are maintained by governments, and including a few which are maintained by private authorities who have agreed to share that with us. So for example, banks databases, or cell phone companies databases of all the cell phone subscribers, and so on and so forth. And the most important thing which we have done is that we have created a smart algorithm which can search for you across all these databases. But the remarkable thing is, I mean, this is something which anyone can do. There's nothing very great in creating an algorithm, but you must realize that the ways in which the records are maintained in these databases, that varies quite a lot. So for example, my name is Jayesh Ranjan. I may figure in 7 databases of the 30 that we have identified to integrate. But you may notice this, that my names are spelled differently in these databases. So my name may be Jayash somewhere, Jayesh somewhere. In the South, as you know, lots of abbreviations are used. So in some cases, of course, I'm not from the South, so I don't have too many abbreviations. But some of you, I'm just illustrating. Again, I really don't know your names, but if someone has a similar sounding name, just pardon me. Suppose your name is BVR Mohan Reddy. So in some cases, it may be used as BVR Mohan Reddy. In somewhere, it can be B Venkat Ranga Mohan Reddy. In some cases, it can be Reddy Mohan Ranga. I mean, all ways of variations are possible. Similarly, father's name. We use 3 identifiers: name, father's name, and address. Similar spelling errors, spelling variations with father's name. Address is even more imprecise. So as you know, in the West, the addresses will be very, very precise. 100 Bank Street means precisely a place where that address is. But in India, as you know, the addresses will be complicated. Lots of identification markers will be used in the address: behind this bank, behind that shop, left after this, and so on and so forth. Without using Aadhaar, some of you may think that it is very easy now that there is a common identifier called Aadhaar to link as many databases as you can. But Supreme Court has prohibited the use of Aadhaar for any purposes. So minus Aadhaar, without using Aadhaar, we have been able to develop this algorithm which traces you based on the imperfections in your spelling of your name, imperfections in the spelling of your father's name, and multiple ways and wrong ways in which addresses are written, with 97% of accuracy, 97.3% of accuracy. When we started this exercise about 5 years ago, our accuracy levels were about 70%. But as you know, those of you who have a tech background would know the way in which machine learning operates. The more number of, and these 30 databases put together across different departments have 42 crores of data, individual data points. And
so I have to tell you, Jayesh, we definitely need to work with you, because at DIRI, which is part of ISB, Digital Identity Research Initiative, we have looked at exactly the same kind of thing, where we have looked at data from multiple sources related to PDS and Aadhaar, and we have also been able to replicate exactly what you're saying. So I think we need to work together to see how we can. So the interesting thing about this is, you are going to come to it, but I think there are issues of privacy and other things, legality. But what you mentioned was, this doesn't use Aadhaar at all. Neither does our program. Plus the fact that it's not able to identify you with the 100% accuracy is actually a good thing, because it's like a little noise in the data. So it gets around this issue of being able to clean it down completely. And once you take these individual records and aggregate them to create indices, you get even more protection. So we can actually create economic activity without worrying about privacy. I think this is a brilliant solution. Yeah, please go ahead.
So far we have been using it in a few very important contexts from the government system. So for example, many of you would know that the government provides to the poor people grains at a subsidized price. And this was very relevant in these lockdown periods when livelihoods were affected. You must be aware that states throughout the country and also the national government distributed food kits to poor people. Now, how do you claim that you are a poor person? Suppose I want to say that I also need that rice because I'm a poor person. So what this exercise that we have done, this is called Citizens 360. So what Citizens 360 does is that if I ask for any claim for any government benefit, we run this program to find out whether I am eligible for it or not. So if I'm a poor person, if I'm claiming to be a poor person, it is very obvious that I should not be owning a car. My name will not figure in the car database or the database of transport vehicles.
I see.
I presume
you're able to do targeting, which is a big problem in these fields. Yeah. So for example, if there is a program that is only targeted towards the poor, you want to make sure that they don't have a credit card or other ways of I see.
And with experience, the way in which we filter all these target groups, this is improving. So we realize that a poor person typically will not consume electricity more than 100 units a month. So now from the electricity database, I can find out if you are a consumer who is consuming more than 100 units. So there's a question mark about it. Similarly, we presume that you will not have multiple mobile instruments. As you know, some of us have 2 mobile instruments, some of us have 3, but on an average, a poor person should not have more than 1. So then the other beauty is that we are also able to do relationship analysis. So suppose I asked for a benefit, but who are my family members? Who is my brother? Who is my sister? Who is my wife? Who is my father? So this algorithm also helps build that family tree. And let me also share this with you. I mentioned to you that this is almost 98%, 97.3% accurate. The time it takes to give results. Suppose my name is put in the Citizens 360. Within 30 seconds, we get the results. So not only it is extremely fast, but it also gives pretty accurate results. So we use it for targeting. We have also started using it for contactless and paperless transactions. So when I mentioned that suppose you are a poor person, typically government identifies someone as a poor person if he has a below poverty line certificate. You must show some paper that this paper proves that I'm a poor person. So normally in olden days, these certificates would be issued by someone visiting you. Suppose you apply for this BPL certificate, someone goes to your hut or home or whatever and looks at you, identifies what profession you practice, and then make a rough estimate whether you really qualify. Now there is no need for all that. Just by pulling out your records from this database, I will be able to portray a relatively accurate picture of who you are and whether you deserve that thing.
So Jayesh, I have to tell you that you're scaring me a little bit now. You know that, right? And you anticipate this is going to be controversial. And I'm sure there are people. Arushi, are there people with raised hands?
Yes, Professor, there are.
Okay, can we go to some of the questions? Because I can already see that some people are saying, are we creating a new China here or not? Okay. Go ahead and unmute somebody. Arushi.
So, Jilam, would you like to?
Yes. Good evening, sir. Good evening, Professor. Thank you, Aishi, for unmuting me. So my question to sir is there are a couple of questions. So firstly, I wanted to know that you said that there has been a considerable increase in the income of the weavers. So I just wanted to know, how did we do it? Where did we create source for some ancillary income for the weavers, or it was just through their weaving and the handloom that we have done? That was my first question.
So first, only one question. Okay, so the rules are, can I lay down the rules? When you ask a question, can be only one question, not two, not three. It has to be a question. And third thing is, please don't say thank you for allowing me and all this. Skip the thank yous. We are going to send a big thank you letter to Jayesh. So in the interest of time, go straight to the question. So the question Jilam is asking is, how did you do it? How did you increase the thing? What exactly were the interventions?
Yeah, thank you. So for specific intervention, see, if you understand a weaver's income dynamics or economics, you find that they are heavily indebted. They never make, so you must be reading this very commonly, that the weaver who makes the sari, let us say, you must be sure wearing saris. So a Pochampalli sari, if you come to Hyderabad and visit a store, people will be paying 2,000 rupees, 2,500 rupees for a beautiful Pochampalli sari. But the weaver who actually has woven that sari would have hardly got 200 rupees. So we find that the inability of the weaver to really demand more is because he's caught in a web of transactions where his power to bargain or influence is very, very minimal. So it all begins when who supplies these raw material to him. So as you know, to manufacture any piece of clothing, you require yarn. So there is a market of yarn which is controlled by certain people. So first of all, we broke that cycle. Now yarn is available at your doorsteps for door delivery. So all kinds of other raw material also. The government now, we have created what are called yarn banks. So in Pochampalli, so Pochampalli is actually a village very close to Hyderabad. In fact, it takes just about 40-45 minutes from ISB campus to go there. So if you once you physically land here and if you really want to visit that village, we'll be very happy to organize your visit there. So when you go to Pochampalli, you'll realize that there's a yarn bank there. In all other weaving clusters also, we have created similar yarn banks. Second, they create or they offer designs. There are a group of people who are called master weavers. So they are the ones who, so if you understand weaving, you will realize that it's a very intricate process of, it's like writing a code. So how do you put the things together to design a flower or a bird or any geometrical pattern, etc., the colors. So it requires lots of creativity. So there are certain amount of master weavers who have been able to become some kind of middlemen who control this entire process of giving designs and taking a big cut in lieu of giving that design. So what we have done is that we have introduced very well-known and passionate designers, some of the big names of the country, to these weavers. So I'm not sure how many of you follow the fashion industry. There is a very eminent designer, a global designer. She's Bangladeshi in origin, but I think she lives in London or maybe in Paris. She used to be a supermodel in her days. Her name is BB Russell. So BB Russell is one of the designers who works with Telangana Handlooms. Closer home, those of you who are from Delhi will know this designer. Her name is Reena Singh. She has this brand called Eka. So Reena Singh works with handloom weavers. And of course, in Telangana and Hyderabad itself, there are quite a few who work with handloom weavers. So we have now created a direct channel through which designs are made. We have also created.
Yeah, go ahead. I was.
No, sorry. Yeah, two quick points. So one is that, again, some of you would be aware that a very prominent marketplace for fashion is a series of events which is called Lakme Fashion Week. Typically, governments don't go there. Designers display. You will be amazed to hear this, that for the first time in the spring Lakme Fashion Show, just before this pandemic broke out, sometimes in February, Telangana handlooms were displayed in Lakme Fashion Week. And the last thing which I wanted to tell you was that we have also created a small buffer of money with each of the weavers. So we have a scheme which is called, it's a matching thrift scheme. So whatever earnings you get, if you save, let us say 1 rupee, the government will match it by giving you 2 rupees. So that is for a rainy day. And right now, this is a rainy day. So people are using that money which we have given to them. So it's a very well thought of set of interventions with which ensure that first of all the chains of indebtedness get broken, and then they get newer opportunities like getting in touch with the best designers, selling your product in Lakme Fashion Week, e-commerce, and so on and so forth. So this can be a very good students project also. Tomorrow.
So in fact, this is your thoughts are coming at the right time. Students are taking their first course in managerial economics, and I think a few ideas that came right out of this is, one is to do with the industrial structure. So you, instead of one person bargaining, you are bargaining for the entire group, which creates some kind of a monopoly. You're going to learn about that. You're also using information networks to connect these to bigger markets. You're also removing some of the barriers to connect them to talent, other people. And finally, you're also breaking some of the financial markets barriers that these people have to face. So all of these together have helped these people. Another question.
Yes, we have Aksh Sani.
Aksh, and go straight to the question.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon, Jayesh sir. So I wanted to ask you about the challenges that you faced while implementing your these ideas for doubling the income of the weavers. In our experience, I come from a family business background where we had tried to do some upskilling activities for the workers in the nearby rural areas. So in some of the initiatives that we had organized, we found that there was very low turnout of the people over there because they were not very interested in upskilling themselves to end up working in a factory. It seems that the younger people had greater aspirations for themselves, and the older people had already found some job which they were merely content with. So the space of people that were actually interested in enlisting in these were very low. So what kind of initiatives or what kind of problems did you face while implementing this? And did you actually get the catchment area that you had planned for?
So I think this is actually a question that I was going to raise earlier, which is the issue of upskilling. I think that's what he's referring to. That how do you increase the skills which will increase wages and so on and so forth, and how do you match skills to jobs? That's another big project that we are taking at Jumpstart India. So maybe Jayesh, you can give us some insights on what the Telangana state is doing for first creating those skills, identifying who need those skills, and finally being able to match those skills with the right kind of jobs.
Yeah. Yes, Professor Chaudhary. And I'll pull out another perspective, which is in this question, which is that how do you motivate or influence younger generation, the newer generation? See, what he's saying is very, very true. One of the reasons why their incomes were going down was that normally if you go to a household in Pochampalli, you will realize that the whole family weaves together. These are pit looms. So within their home, they have erected that loom, and the husband, the wife, their children, all of them weave together, and therefore the productivity is more. Typically, they're able to finish a sari between them in 4 days and so on and so forth. So in a month, if they churn out, let us say 10 saris, they get maybe 8,000 rupees or 10,000 rupees or whatever. So suppose the children say that, no, this is too conventional or too conservative, not very attractive. I'll go to Hyderabad, which is just 40 kilometers away. I'll try for some BPO job, or I'll try to become a store attendant in Spencer or somewhere. So what do you do? So I'll bring that perspective, but I'll also answer one more point. So you will realize this, and you must have already realized this. I can't imagine that your interactions with government would be zero. You would have interacted with the government in some ways or the other. Normally, what happens is that the credibility of the government in the eyes of the people, particularly the poor and the poorest of the poor, is very, very low. So if you go to a weaver community and tell that on behalf of the government, I want to introduce some program, people will just laugh at you. They may think that perhaps this is some scheme which has been introduced and there's some money in it, and they will pocket half of it and half may come my way. So there'll be lots of skepticism about all these things. So you must also ensure that when you reach out to the people, how do you do that? If you reach out in that context of, in the background of that skepticism, etc., then nothing will happen. So in this particular case, we also started working with organizations who have already been working closely with the weavers, that is NGOs. So you would be knowing that there are institutions like Dastakar Heart, Crafts Council of India, and so on and so forth, who enjoy better credibility in the eyes of such people. So they were our conduits. We would not directly go and tell that Reena Singh will come and teach you some design, or someone else will come and do something. So this is the first point which I also wanted to clarify. So this was the big challenge. So people in whose eyes you have zero credibility, you have to work with them. So how do you do that? So if at all there was a challenge, this was the challenge, not designing those interventions or finding the money to support those interventions, etc. The other point to answer your question would be, again, if you go to Pochampalli, which is, as I said, very close to ISB campus, you will see a training center there, which is run by Microsoft. You will find 20 systems there, which have CAD CAM, and we have partnered with a local NGO, an NGO which works for weavers, not local NGO, called Abhiyara, which runs these training programs. So younger generation of these weaver families, they are trained. See, typically what happens is that the craft was, while Pochampalli saris are even very beautiful now, but people tell that 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, the patterns were even more intricate, even more attractive, but no one practices them because they have lost that skill. So what we have done using Abhiyara is pull out from the archives some of the old patterns, old designs, and using this CAD CAM, etc., using the Microsoft skills, we have been able to convert that into a trainable module on the computers. So the new generation training is happening in a very modern way. They sit in an air-conditioned room. Someone from the Microsoft team comes and teaches them CAD CAM. And this attracts them, this fascinates them. It is as, I mean, instead of sitting in or coming to Hyderabad and working as a store attendant in some Spencer's or somewhere, they can do something which is more modern and rooted to their tradition and so on and so forth. So this is the model which has worked well in Pochampalli.
It's very interesting, Jayesh. I did go to Pochampalli 15 years ago. It was guys, everybody who comes here, you have to go to Pochampalli. It's like being in another world. The people there are so dedicated, and the artists, the whole family is dedicated. But there was an interesting question I asked one of the weavers there. He had a system there with pulleys and, and I said, why don't you modernize it, And you know what he told me something? He said to me, if I modernize it and if it breaks, I won't know how to fix it. But this I have built myself, so I know how to fix it right here. So there is this tension between modernity and technology versus older system where you are self-reliant. What do you think about that, Jayesh?
No, so again, I fully understand what you are saying, and I would like to bring again a very live example from this first thing. So for those who are not able to follow the drift of what Professor Chaudhary and I are speaking, see, the looms on which they work, these are made of wood, a locally available wood, and they're made in a very frugal kind of way. Now, what has happened is about, again, 7-8 years ago, a youngster from one of the weaving families, he noticed, he's sharp. Incidentally, he got the Padma Shri award 2 years ago, and a biopic was made on him. If you're interested, this biopic can be shown in the class as well. This biopic is called Malaysia. It is in Telugu, but I guess it has English subtitles.
Subtitles, yeah.
So this particular person, he realized that his mother, whenever a thread breaks, so when you are doing this hand loom operations using your hands, breakages happen quite frequently. So his mother had to bend over to kind of wherever that thread is broken and stretch herself and fix it, then go back and kind of weave. And then after an hour, somewhere else it will break. So throughout the day, 7-8 times, she would be bending over, stretching. So this person brought in an innovation, which is in the local language, it is called ASU. So what he did was that he introduced another a small plank, which you can use to, whichever portion is broken, that comes to you. You don't have to go there and bend and all that. And just for that innovation, one, the physical labor of doing that weaving came down. And second, little bit of improvement in your whole process also came. So Mallesham, he patented that machine, which is called ASU machine. And the government has decided to supply, replace all the old looms with these ASU looms. So these are not extremely machine-like, but they are a very big innovation. And these are all frugal innovations, the grassroots innovation that our country is famous for. And Mallesham is an important advisor for all of us. He's of course a Padma awardee now, so we give him lots of respect. But this is how process improvement. So it's not large-scale modernization. It's not that I throw away the entire wooden loom and bring some mechanical stuff there. But these are implemented innovations which have come up from the bottoms up.
Okay. Nobody has a question on privacy. Are we going to let Jayesh get away by saying that he can, in 30 seconds, find out everything about us? Anybody wants to ask a question like that or no?
No, so Professor Chaudhary, let me clarify. Even if one is so, first of all, this database is confined to citizens of Telangana. So most of them are non-citizens, so they're not worried. They're thinking that Big Brother is not watching them. But the fact is, we are not creating any new entry in the database. So when you buy a car, I'm sure it is implicit in your knowledge that your name will be recorded somewhere. If you apply for a passport, I'm sure you know that your name will be available in somewhere else, and so on and so forth. So first of all, we are not creating any mega or a better database in which everything has been merged together and some 42 crores of records have been created. This is a common misconception people have. See, all these databases exist the way they were. They have their own security features. No one can hack them, and they have their own access control and stuff like that. All I have done is to create an algorithm which talks to these databases and pulls out. And if you are claiming some benefit, it is expected that some inquiries will happen to your claim. So I have dispensed with a manual inquiry, and I'm doing a data-driven inquiry. And one thing which I wanted to share this with you, please keep this confidential. We have also used this whole Citizens 360 on crime prevention or crime detection, not prevention, but detection. So our police people say, typically if you are a criminal, you change your identities. I won't be murdering someone claiming to be Jayesh Ranjan. And these days, I'm sure you are watching lots of movies. I watch lots of these thrillers and crime and in the nights. And I notice that people conceal themselves and they go under different names and stuff like that. So how it becomes very difficult for police to pinpoint whether the person who murdered someone, calling him as Bhagwan Chaudhary, is he the real Bhagwan Chaudhary or someone is impersonating him. So this has been, we have been able to detect some very sensational, including terror cases, where people have completely hidden their identities, try to come out with a new identity, but the digital footprint which they have left behind, we have been able to connect dots and tell the police that most likely this is the person who is claiming to be someone else, he's really this guy.
Okay, I think that clarification is fantastic, because what you're saying is you're not creating new data, you have just created a way of searching that data more efficiently. And in fact, you're using it against people who might be either criminals or people who are trying to game the system. So it's being done. I have to say, there's something you started with at the beginning, and I'd like to come back to it. You said, you know, you went to an MBA school, but you've spent all your life in public service, and you're implying that these two are different worlds. But I think our MBA students are beginning to realize that this division is in fact artificial. The world is all about solving problems. Whether you use private sector, corporate, or government, it has to ultimately boil down to, are we solving a big problem or not? And I think we should do away with these classifications. What you're able to do in public service, somebody may be able to do working in a corporation, or working with an NGO, or even a nonprofit. So there are many different ways of really addressing this issue. I wanted to take time to go to the next thing, which is a big topic that we are also considering in Jumpstart India, which is, how does the Telangana state, or other states for that matter, recognize where to put the investments, which industries to support, what type of incentive investments there should be? Is it done in a systematic way, or is it done in an opportunistic, what looks good? Can you give us some insights about that?
Yes. So if you look at the industrial and investment policy of Telangana, this was prepared 6 years ago when Telangana became a new state. At that time, I was the commissioner for industries. I'm the principal secretary now, but there was a different principal secretary. So he spearheaded that process and I assisted him. So if you read that policy document, of course, I wrote that whole document. So every single sentence, every comma, every full stop is mine. But most of the ideas were of my boss at that time. So if you look at the document, you will find it to be a very progressive document, very business friendly. Some of the reforms that we have carried out. Most of you would be aware that our Prime Minister started this initiative called Make in India. And he has urged upon the states to reforms. And Telangana today is recognized as the state which has reformed the most. So what you said, Professor Chaudhary, is very true. We decided not to boil the ocean. We decided to play on our strengths. Which are the sectors which have a good potential of doing well in Telangana or in Hyderabad? In certain sectors, we already have a legacies. For example, pharma industry is pretty big here. This is the hub of the pharma world, the biotechnology, the vaccines. And we decided that we'll build upon that industry, but we'll try to fill the gaps. So for example, medical devices were not very big in Telangana. They were not big in India at all at that point in time. So we decided that while we continue to support the pharma, the biotech, the life sciences industry, we will add medical devices into it, medtech into it. Similarly, IT was big. I mean, after Bangalore, as all of you would know, this is the second largest hub. But we decided that we will move away from IT services to more of product development. And since the last 4 years, you are very much a part of it, Professor Chaudhary. We have started focusing on emerging technologies and lots of initiatives on blockchain, on cybersecurity, on artificial intelligence. And people recognize this. In fact, if you go to any NASSCOM summit or conference, at least 10 times examples of Telangana will be given during that summit. So, and not by me. I mean, if I'm a speaker, I'll be giving 100 examples, but these will be by speakers who have nothing to do with Telangana. So this is how we have selected the champion sectors. In Telangana, I mean, when this was a part of the state of Andhra Pradesh, while handlooms and weaving and crafts were there, but there was no focus on textile as an industry. But incidentally, this again may surprise many of you. Telangana is one of the top cotton growers in the country, the third biggest cotton growing state in the country. And the quality of cotton, which the industry itself tells, is the best in the country. In fact, Tirupur, which is the center for textile industry, imports lots of, or rather gets lots of cotton from Telangana. So we felt that it is very natural that we bring textile industry also to Telangana. So we have created a very foresighted textiles policy with a mix of incentives and infrastructure support and skills. So this is how we have selected the champion sectors, and we have also located that within the state. Some are close to Hyderabad, so pharma obviously requires a very high level of skilled workers. So that industry is close to Hyderabad. We are very important destination for the defense and aerospace industry. The who's who of the defense manufacturers are in Hyderabad. So that is one sector that we have identified. So lots of thought and lots of planning has gone in identifying what we call the champion sectors, and then deciding what to do, what interventions are important. And of course, it is a very competitive game. So you also have to study what the other states are offering and what will be the differentiator for Telangana. And nowadays, these days, when, as you know, globally, there is lots of anti-China sentiments happening, not only yesterday and day before, but for the last 6-7 months. And many companies are being motivated by their countries to look at alternatives beyond China. So we are also one of the important players in that race. India is an important player, but within India, if you look at it, which are the top, let us say, 8 to 10 states which are really competing for these investments, we are one of them.
Okay, I think this you brought in some really good points in there. In terms of states competing with other states, do you think the fact that Andhra Pradesh was broken up into two, Telangana and AP, has done a good thing, because now we have two competing states with each other? Rather than one? That was my one question. And my second question was, what is Telangana state doing to make this Make in India dream more successful in terms of labor reforms?
Yes, so two short answers. One is that, see, even before the state of combined Andhra Pradesh was getting bifurcated into two, I was publicly mentioning and speaking on multiple platforms that this will do good to both the states. And now that I'm a part of the Telangana state, I can share from my own experience that it has done good to us. So, for example, I spoke about this industrial policy, which has today become the role model policy for the country. We have brought in the kind of reforms which people would have never imagined in those times. That has only become policy because we became a new state and got the chance to write a new policy. If we had remained a part of Andhra Pradesh, it would have been business as usual, status quo. So this is one thing which has been done both here as well as in Andhra Pradesh. They have also done some amazing reforms. We have done, the two states together are always number one, number two on the ease of doing business rankings. We have also been very business friendly and so on and so forth. So in my opinion, it has done good to both the states. But as I already mentioned, it could not do good to, let us say, Chhattisgarh or a Jharkhand or in Uttaranchal. So it is not a given that making smaller states will automatically lead to better governance or progressive reforms and so on and so forth. There has to be a drive to do all that. And the important drive for Telangana has been to prove them wrong. Obviously, when the new state was getting created, there were a large number of people who did not want this to happen. They were opposed to this. So the drive from day one of Telangana has been prove everyone wrong. Everyone who was telling, I'll give you a short example so that it clarifies and tells something to the students. So when the state of Telangana was being created from the erstwhile state of Andhra Pradesh, one of the strongest arguments against that bifurcation was that this state will be extremely deficit in terms of power capacity, power generation, power capacity. So people used to say that this will become a dark state. And in English, when I say dark state and all, it's just a phrase. But if you say so in Telugu, if there are some Telugus, I'm sure there will be some number of Telugu speaking.
Yeah.
They will understand this. See, Telugulo meeku telise untundi chikati antaru. So chikati rajyamga maripotundi Telangana atla cheppevaru. So what I mentioned in Telugu was that they would say that this will become chikati. Chikati is the term for dark, and it is not a literal way of dark. Chikati is, let me say, pitch dark. I mean, nothing can be seen. So this is what they say. That, and darkness is both literal as well as symbolic. Like the leader will be, blinded by darkness. They won't lead you well, and obviously there will be no power generation. which is true. All the generation was in the state of Andhra Pradesh. So when Telangana came into being on 2nd June 2014, from that day till today, every day we buy about 1,000 to 1,200 megawatts of power and give it to all the households, industries, farmers. And of course, we are ramping up our own generation capacity. And hopefully by the end of the year, we will stop buying power anymore. But this was done just to prove them wrong. So they said that Telangana will become a dark state. I will disprove it. I will show to you that there will be not even a minute of power outage. And for the last 6 years, there has not been even a minute of power outage for any industry, household. So this was the driver for Telangana, that I'll prove you wrong. So as I said, smaller states automatically need not be better governed states. But if the drive is there, that I will be a model state, I will be people-friendly state, I'll reform, and so on and so forth, you can do wonders. So then you also asked about labor reform. So my personal view is like this, Professor Chaudhary, that in the last 5 years, we have had excellent labor relations in this state. You would be knowing, many students may or may not know this, but there are states in the country. I don't want to name and appear to be running down any particular state, but there are states in the country where general managers have been shot dead on the shop floor. So such a thing is unimaginable in Telangana. I mean, even the possibility that someone will speak to you in a raised voice or touch you is unthinkable. And the reason for this is that we have, of course, we have been very fair to our workers. Not that they get astronomical wages or anything. The wages actually in Telangana are the lowest amongst the 5 southern states. But the respect and protecting their rights and so on and so forth, that is maintained very well in Telangana. So we do not want to upset this apple cart, this balance. We, of course, support investors, investments, but at the same time protect workers' rights. So because of which there has been no dharnas, no agitations, no kind of industrial strife at all in the last 6 years. I do not want to now, in the name of reforms, take away some of those rights, etc. I am always open to do process simplification. For example, in the name of labor laws, you have to submit 10 formats every month. I don't want all that to happen. You don't have to submit anything. If at all something has to be submitted, submit online. Your licenses have to be reviewed every 6 months and renewed and all that. I want to do away with all that. So all those kind of reforms I'm prepared to do. But to say that labor can be sacked at any time or they can work for 12 hours, they will still get 8 hours of wages. Our state is not in favor of doing any of those things.
Okay, so you're saying you want to protect the workers, but make it the process simple and easier, and that will reduce the cost. We are almost out of time. I want to mention 2 things before we close. One is, you're going to see Jayesh at ISB quite often. Jayesh has been a friend of ISB, and we have a number of things we have done together. The most personal to me was this collaboration called Blockchain District that we partnered with the state of Telangana, and Jayesh mentioned this. In fact, right outside my office, we have created a lab called Blockchain District Lab, and we are doing a number of projects related to data, privacy, and so on and so forth. And the second thing I want to mention is, I like this phrase. I'm going to ask to give a final piece of advice to my students, but one came right to my mind, which is the attitude students can take is, I'm going to prove them wrong. If anybody tells you you cannot do it, say, I'm going to prove them wrong. I like that. Do you have some final words for our students?
Just to wish all of them well and review your contexts, your priorities in view of what's happening, what's unfolding right now before our eyes. We require more compassion. We require true partnerships. Professor Chaudhary alluded to it, that whether you are in the corporate sector or government sector or NGOs, or even if you are an entrepreneur, many issues still have not been handled properly in the whole country, the whole world, and every one of us have responsibilities. So let's have this attitude of positivity, optimism, partnership, and much more compassion than ever before. So good wishes to all of you. Hope to see you sometime very soon in Hyderabad.
Thank you very much for being here, and thank you students for listening. I always find Jayesh's talks to be very inspiring, and hopefully we'll see more of him in this forum and perhaps in person as well. So thank you all.